Okay, our 8th video out of 11 is going to cover station 8, which is find the average rate of change for the following functions on the interval -1 to 3. That is telling us that we have two x values. x1 is -1 and x2 is +3. We need to find the y values that are associated and then do the average rate of change, which is the slope. This is a fancy word for slope over that interval. So we're going to use our equation. Average rate of change is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Or you could write that as f of x2 minus f of x1 minus x2 minus, or over x2 minus x1. So we do f of x1, which is f of -1 first. That would be -9, meaning we have the point -1, -9 as one of our 2 points that we're going to be finding the slope with. F of x2 is f of 3, so that would be 3 times 3 minus 6, or 3. So that would be the point 3, 3. So the average rate of change between those 2 points is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. My pen is not really behaving. That would be 12 over 4, or an average rate of change of 3. Same thing on letter B. We do g of x1, which would be g of -1, or -1 squared plus 4 times -1 minus 2. That would be -1 minus 4 minus 2, or -7. Meaning the point -1, -7 is on the graph. And then g of x2 is g of 3, which is -3 squared, or plus 4 times 3 minus 2, which would be -9 plus 12 minus 2. That would be 1. So our point is 3, 1. Our average rate of change then is y2 minus y1, 1 minus -7, over x2 minus x1, 3 minus -1, or 8 over 4, which would be an average rate of change of 2. On the graph, that should actually be a little bit easier, okay? We're not there yet, never mind. We still have an x1 of -3 and an x2 of, or sorry, x1 is -1 and x2 is 3, and we're still using our slope equation. So we still do the same thing. H of -1 is the absolute value of 2 times -1 plus 1 minus 5. That'd be the absolute value of -1 minus 5, which would be 1 minus 5, or -4. So our point there is -1, -4. Then we do h of 3, which would be the absolute value of 2 times 3 plus 1 minus 5, which is the absolute value of 7 minus 5, which would be 7 minus 5, or 2. So the point would be 3, 2. That means the average rate of change between those 2 points is y2 minus y1, 2 minus -4, over x2 minus x1, 3 minus -1. 6 over 4, or an average rate of change of 3/2. Finally, on k of x, doesn't change anything other than we have to plug into the correct piece. So k of -1 would be the top piece. That would be 3 times -1 plus 1, which would be -2. So the point is -1, -2 for the graph. K of 3 would get plugged into the bottom piece. That would be 3 squared, or 9. So 3, 9 would be the other point we're finding the average rate of change. 9 minus -2 over 3 minus -1. That would be 11/4. Does not reduce, so that is our answer. Finally, on letter E, we have a graph. Same deal. We are still looking at an x1 value of -1 and an x2 value of +3. On a graph, that actually ought to be a little bit easier, because all we have to do is locate the points on the graph. So when x is negative 1, we're at the point negative 1, 2. And when x equals 3, well, this is the point 3.8, which we can do some basic algebra 1 to establish that, but I'm hoping you'll just take my word for it so this video can stay relatively short. That means that the average rate of change is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. That would be negative 1.2 divided by 4, which would be negative 0.3, or 3/10. That does it for station 8. On to station 9.